For computers to be useful, we need a way of interacting with them, starting a program, giving it data, getting results out. In this video, I'll introduce you to the Unix command interpreter called the shell. Today we have amazing hardware and software for interacting with computers. We have keyboards, mice, high-resolution color screens, smart Windows systems. But in the beginning, systems only had a simple character input and display, no windows and no mouse. To use the system, you typed characters on the keyboard and the output characters were displayed on the screen. And even before display screens, most interaction was done with a printing terminal like this. Then screens came along. Even earlier, computers had programs, which are patterns of bits, stored on physical media, such as punch cards or paper tape. The programs would be loaded from this media into the memory and then executed. Jump forward to 1969 and we see the development of the Unix operating system by Dennis Ritchie and Ken Thompson at Bell Labs in the USA. In the Unix operating system, they developed a special program that interpreted commands typed by the user at the keyboard and then executed those commands by running programs. Ritchie and Thompson got the idea for this from an earlier system developed at MIT called Multics. Multics was never a success, but Unix went on to conquer the world and is now the basis for the vast majority of computer systems. Every iOS phone, every Android phone, every tablet uses some variant of Unix underneath. In Unix, the command interpreter program is called the shell, and this shell program reads a line of characters from input, from your keyboard or sometimes from a file, and analyzes the string of characters and then runs the program that you specify. And originally, the output was characters on a screen. We can still do that today on Unix-based systems such as Linux or Mac OS. Let me show you with a demo. Okay, let's see some examples of how the shell works. So here I've got a screen with just this $sign on it. Now the $sign has actually been printed onto the screen, put to the screen by the shell program, and that's what we call a prompt, right? It indicates that it wants you to type a command. And whenever you see that $prompt, that means the shell's ready for you to type. Okay, let's type the first command, and that is to show you what's in the current directory. So it's called ls. It's short for list, and it just means let's list the contents of the directory. And I've got one file in here. So I typed the characters ls and return, and the shell analyzed that line, only 3 characters, but it picked up the first word, which was ls, and looked in the file system, found a command or a file called ls, and executed it. And it printed out, or displayed, what files are in my current directory. So I've got a single file here called my file. Now let's see what's in that file. Now there is a command, a Unix command called cat. It's an odd name, but it actually stands for concatenate, and it concatenates the contents of the file onto your standard output. Now I'm going to give it a parameter, my file, and hit return. And in that file we've got these characters, hello world. So cat space my file, that string of characters was turned into 2 words, cat and my file. It looked up the word cat in the file system and found an executable file called cat, and then it executed it, passing it the remaining words on the line, in other words the word my file. So cat then ran, looked in my file, and read it and put the contents onto the output. Now the next command we'll look at is making a directory. So we make a directory with the command mkdir. I think you'll find that in Unix they shortened all the command names as much as they could, just as an abbreviation, because when this was your main method of running programs, remember there were no mice in those days, You couldn't just click on something. You had to actually type the name of the command. And so they used to shorten them considerably. So mkdir, and we give it the new directory a name. Let's call it newdir. That's going to make a new directory called newdir. Oops, what happened? Nothing seemed to have happened. Well, let's type ls again and see what's happened. And here we go. We've now got two things in our current directory, newdir being that new directory, and we've still got my file that was there before. Now let's change into newdir. So cd newdir, just like this, and we're now in that directory. We type ls, nothing there. That's because we haven't put anything in that new directory yet. So let's go back a directory, and we use the ... as the parent directory to go back. Type ls again, and we're back to where we were. Okay, so let's put a file in that new directory. We can do that using the copy command. Now, instead of copy, as you might expect, instead they abbreviated it to just cp. So cp my file to newdir, and now we change into newdir, ls, and there's our file there. Let's see what's in it. As expected, it's got the same contents as I had before because we just made a copy. Alright, let's remove that. Remove my file, rm once again, instead of remove, it's just rm. Rm my file removes the file. Just verify that. Yep, nothing here now. Change back to that directory. We've still got the copy back here. So that's just a few really simple commands to show you very basics of shell. Now I'll do a lot more demos of the shell as time goes by, and you'll see more and more sophisticated commands that do a lot more than these simple commands. There have been many different shell programs written over the years. It's relatively easy to write a shell, and it's often set as a programming exercise for students to write a simple shell program. Now, the original Unix shell was simply called sh, short for shell, and is still called that, but in these videos I'm going to use another shell program, which is very widespread, called bash, B-A-S-H. Now, bash stands for Born Again Shell, since bash was a clone of a shell program written at Bell Labs by a guy called Steve Bourne. Born Again Shell, get it? Anyway, there are many other shells available. Ones like C shell or K shell or Z shell or many others. As I said, it's a fairly conceptually easy program to write, and there are many very sophisticated shell programs that have been developed. A very basic shell program simply reads text from input and takes a line and breaks it up into words. These are separated by either white space or punctuation. It then takes the first word on the line and looks up that word as the name of a file in the file system somewhere. If it finds a file with that name, it then tells the operating system, using a system call, to execute the binary code found in that file. And that way you run commands. As well as looking for a file that matches the command name and executing it, there are a few commands that are executed by the shell itself without looking for a separate program in a file. For example, if we want to change directory, the command for that is cd, standing for change directory, and that's interpreted directly by the shell. There are also a number of commands interpreted by the shell that do fancy things like if statements and while statements, turning your shell program into a fully fledged programming language. Now, the Unix operating system and the shell has the concept of standard input and standard output files. These are usually connected to the keyboard for input and for the screen for output, but they could equally well be connected to files, reading data from a file or outputting data to a file. When a program sends characters to standard output, they're usually sent to the screen. However, the standard output and input can be redirected to files. And this is done by the shell interpreting things that you type in the command line. We do this in the shell using the greater than symbol for redirecting output and the less than symbol for redirecting input, like in this example. It's the shell reading the characters on that input line that interprets the less than and the greater than symbols, and using system calls redirects the input and the output to a file. There are also some other special names for elements of the file space, the namespace or the file system. For example, the parent directory. If you're somewhere in the file space in a particular directory, you can type change directory to ... and that'll take you to the next level above your current directory, the parent directory. The character dot by itself is interpreted by the shell to mean the current directory. A little tilde symbol means the home directory. And the slash by itself means the root directory, the very top level of your file system. So this has been a very brief introduction to the command line interpreter or shell as we see it in Unix. And the shell, as I said, can be used for simple programming tasks. It is actually a very powerful language, and I'll cover this in further videos.